All right. Hey, welcome back to my channel. I recently renamed my channel Freed from Cult Life, and thank you for being here. I renamed it that because I feel like if you left any kind of high control group, like Jehovah's Witnesses, you truly have been freed. You may lose a lot of friends, well, so-called friends, but you have been freed from a life that was controlled by a cult. And if you want to know what a cult is, just Google signs of a cult. I promise you'll find a few groups, one of them being Jehovah's Witnesses, in that list. Today, I would like to talk about one of the biggest things that helped me to wake up. I mentioned a few things in previous videos, but now I kind of want to dig in each video, kind of get a little more specific about the things that helped me wake up, and hopefully it will wake some of you up, because I believe a large audience here on YouTube current Jehovah's Witnesses, ones who are what we call PMOs, who are physically in but mentally out. You may know that this is not the truth. You may have a lot of questions. You may doubt the leadership because of the flip-flopping and things going on that they talk about, all the things you can do now that you couldn't do before. And so you may be on YouTube just like, look, man, let me just listen to what the ex-JWs are saying. And a lot of you may be here because you do know that makes sense, but you may feel stuck because you have a lot of tight relationships because you've been tied into this religion for years. And if any of you know any Jehovah's Witnesses, you'll know that usually if they're active in their religion, that they don't really hang out with family or workmates or anybody who is not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I believe a large audience are those who are in the religion but just can't get out because they feel stuck. Today I want to focus on something that helped me to wake up, and that was when I found out that Watchtower was the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. They have many corporations, and they were affiliated with the United Nations from 1992 to about October 2001. And this is significant because every Jehovah's Witness is taught for years from the governing body that the United Nations, according to Revelation, they identify the United Nations as the scarlet-colored wild beast. This is something that's a part of Satan's empire, and that at the end time, at the Armageddon, or whenever the end of this so-called system is going to happen, that it's going to be destroyed. And they still believe that. But the big question is, why is Watchtower affiliated as an NGO, that's a non-governmental organization, with the Department of Information? That's the closest tie you can have. Why are they affiliated with, why are they associated with the United Nations in this way? Especially when they've condemned other religions for being an NGO with the United Nations. It is, when I learned this information, it really blew my mind back. And it was a few years ago, so I had to kind of go back, and I had printed up all the letters and everything. And we're about to get into it right now, y'all. Let's take a look. So the Jehovah's Witness, an article came out in The Guardian that in 2008, in October 8th, 2001, an article was released that publicly kind of condemned Watchtower for being an NGO with the United Nations, their Department of Information. The inquiries are so large that the United Nations themselves wrote a letter on October 11th. They said recently the NGO section had been receiving numerous inquiries regarding the association of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York. By the way, this is the name, the legal name behind Jehovah's Witnesses, with the Department of Public Information, or DPI. This organization applied for association with DPI in 1991 and was granted association in 1992. And this is the key point right here. By accepting association with DPI, the organization, that's the Watchtower, agreed to meet criteria for association, including support and respect of the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. And commitment and means to conduct effective information programs with its constituents and to a broader audience about UN activities. In October 2001, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York requested termination of its association with DPI. Following this request, the DPI, Department of Information, has made a decision to disassociate the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York, as of 9 October 2001. Now, remember, the article that came out was October 8th, 2001. So, like, this took hours. Within hours, this was done. Do you not, the Watchtower, they severed ties. Like, no, we're no longer part of it. But let's get into the crazy part about it. Number one, Jehovah's Witnesses are taught that this is, again, the scarlet colored wild beast in Revelation. So if that's the case, then why are y'all affiliated? And the Watchtower condemned Christendom or other religions for being a part of the United Nations. They make a quote saying that right here in the Watchtower 1991, June 1st, page 17. It says here, if you look down, well, let's just start near the top at however, she being the Christendom or the false religion. It says, in her quest for peace and security, she insinuates herself into the favor of the political leaders of the nations. This despite the Bible's warning with that friendship with the world is enmity with God. Moreover, in 1990, she strongly advocated the League of Nations as man's best hope for peace. Since 1945, she has put her hope in the United Nations. How extensive is her involvement with this organization? And you can see that scripture there, Revelation 17:3. That's where they say that this is the scarlet colored wild beast, the United Nations. Notice the next paragraph. A recent book, see how vague they are? A recent book gives an idea when it states no less than 24 Catholic organizations are represented at the UN. Several of the world's religious leaders have visited the international organization. Most memorable were the visits of His Holiness Pope VI during the General Assembly in 1965 and of Pope John Paul II in 1979. And it goes on to say, about many religions have special invocations, prayers, hymns, service for the United Nations. They're basically saying that these other religions, especially Catholics, are represented at the UN. But this partial quote is taken from a book called New Genesis Shaping a Global Spirituality by this man named Robert Mueller, who worked for the United Nations. But they left this sentence out right before they say no less than 24 Catholic organizations. See where it says, in his book, he says, all major world religions are accredited to the United Nations as non-governmental organizations. Then the Watchtower starts to quote saying, for example, no less than, you see how they do that? They leave out the book, the name of the book, by saying a recent book gives an idea, instead of saying who the book is from, who wrote it, and what they really mentioned in it, that all major world religions are accredited to the United Nations as non-governmental organizations. Now remember, Jehovah's Witnesses feel like they are set apart and not like any other religion in the world. They are the only religion chosen by God to be, Christ is the head of the congregation, right? He came in 1919 and he found out that once he was enthroned, let me go back to 1914. And this is maybe a little confusing, but Jehovah's Witnesses believe that in 1914, Jesus Christ in heaven was enthroned on the king as king of God's kingdom. And he would come back to earth, and he did in 1919, and found that the Jehovah's Witnesses they weren't named at the time. They were called International Bible Students. But that this group of people were the ones chosen by his father, Jehovah, to be his one true people on earth. So, just a little background there right quick. So, if you see the mindset of Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe, or the leaders taught that they were the only ones and that they're not like any other religion. However, we see that by their affiliation with the United Nations, they are just like any other religion that they condemn. But what's sad is they tell their members that they cannot have certain jobs, that if that job has some kind of work involved that's contrary to God's laws, that they shouldn't be working it. But yet they can be affiliated as a non-government, as an NGO with the United Nations for about 9 years. And we'll talk in a minute about why they say they terminated their association. But if you go back to a Watchtower 1982, July 15th. And there it says the Bible condemns such things as stealing, idolatry, and the misuse of blood. So a Christian could hardly engage in work where he is directly promoted and where in work where he directly promoted such things. So see that they're even talking about people, the members, what kind of work they can do, secular work. It says further down, even a janitor or a receptionist at a blood bank or a plant making only weapons of war is directly linked with work contrary to God's word. Oh, the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy. Yes, it's a double standard when it comes to what you can do, but what they can do is completely different. Check this letter out from the Department of Information, NGO section of the United Nations, dated March 4th, 2004. Now you notice this would be about 2.5, almost 3 years after it was terminated its affiliation with the Watchtower Bible Tract Society. Notice it says recently the NGO section has been receiving numerous inquiries regarding the association of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York with the Department of Public Information. This organization applied for association with DPI in 1991 and was granted association in 1992. By accepting association with DPI, the organization agreed to meet criteria for association, including support and respect of the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Yes, when you become an NGO, you have to support and respect the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Further down, the last paragraph. Well, let's look at down the addition, the criteria for NGOs to become associated with the department or DPI include the following: that the NGO share the principles of the UN Charter, operate solely on a non-for-profit basis, have a demonstrated interest in United Nations issues, and a proven ability to reach large or specialized audiences. And the last bullet, have the commitment and means to conduct effective information programs about UN activities by publishing newsletters, bulletins, and pamphlets, organizing conferences, seminars, and roundtables, and enlisting the cooperation of the media. So, we expect that you all will share this information with your concerned colleagues, as we are unable to address the scores of duplicate requests regarding the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society that are being directed to our offices. Thank you for your interest in the work of the United Nations. This is from the NGO section, Department of Public Information. The fact is that when this got out, so many witnesses and so many people were writing saying, hey, wait a minute, was Watchtower affiliated with you guys? Like, they shouldn't be, because they telling us on one end that we can't have certain jobs because it's go contrary to God. But yes, this is scarlet colored wild beast. How y'all gonna be affiliated with them? And it's funny too, because in the years that they were affiliated and as an NGO with the United Nations, many articles that were written praised the work of the United Nations, especially in the 90s, where they check out the 1991 Awake, September 8th, page 10. You can look at, here's another one, the 1995 Watchtower, October 1st, pages 3 and page 7. The 1998 Awake discussed the topic of human rights and dedicated a number of pages to the United Nations. The Awake of 2000, December 8th, and the Awake, July 22nd Awake 2001, discussed the benefits of volunteering for the United Nations. Now, the Watchtower had a response. They had a response on why they were basically an NGO with the United Nations, the Scarlet Colored Wild Beast. Notice this letter here where they says, this is sent to all the branches from the World Headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses in November 1st, 2001. Notice there's that second paragraph. It says, our purpose for registering with the Department of Public Information as an NGO in 1991 was to have access to research material available on health, ecological, and social problems at the United Nations library facilities. We had been using the library for many years prior to 1991, but in that year it became necessary to register as an NGO to have continued access. Notice at the end of the last paragraph says, still, the criteria for association of NGOs, at least in their latest version, contained language that we cannot subscribe to. When we realized this, we immediately withdrew our registration. We are grateful that this matter was brought to our attention. It was brought to your attention from an article in The Guardian. Okay. That article by Stephen Bates in The Guardian on of October 8th and 15th, it says misrepresents the background to Jehovah's Witnesses registration with the United Nations and contain a number of factual errors. It says in 1991, one of our legal corporations registered with the United Nations as an NGO for the sole purpose of getting access to the extensive library of the United Nations. This enabled a writer who received an identification card to enter their library for research purposes and to obtain information that has been used in writing articles in our journals about the United Nations. There was nothing secret about it. At the time of the initial application, no signature was required on the form. Years later, unbeknown to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, the United Nations published criteria for association, stipulating that affiliate NGOs are required to support the goals of the United Nations. After learning of the situation, our membership as NGO was withdrawn and the ID card of the writer was returned. So they're saying that they need it for the sole purpose of getting access to the extensive library of the United Nations. And that when they learned about the criteria that needed to be met to be an NGO, they withdrew. But isn't it odd that this article came out October 8th and then literally within days, the Watchtower requested to withdraw from the United Nations? Well, notice here, January 3rd, 2002, a letter from the United Nations. It says the procedure for a library pass is the following. The interested party needs to fill out an application form and supply a letter of recommendation in support of research. If the needed material is not available in a UN depository library, the application is approved and sent to UN security. Notice the second paragraph. The issuance of a library pass is independent of NGO status or any other status. There has been no change in the library's pass policy in general. However, please be advised that as a consequence of September 11 attacks, no library passes are being issued for the time being while security situation being at the UN is being studied. This letter here really kind of sums it up from the United Nations. In March of 2002, the name is wiped out, Mr. whoever it is. It says, in reply to your letter dated February 19, 2002, please be informed of the following. Number one, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York, Inc., an NGO, had been associated with the Department of Public Information since 1992 and requested to terminate its association in 2001. The request was granted on 9 October 2001. According to the website, Watchtower.org, the organization is a legal organization in use by Jehovah's Witnesses. Number two, the United Nations does not force or trick any NGO to be associated with DPI. And number three, the criteria for association for NGOs have not been changed since 1991. Well, that was a lot of information. But if you want to know more, go to jwfacts.com, where you can read about all this information, look at the letters, look at the whole correspondence back and forth between the United Nations and the Watchtower representative, and you'll find that the Watchtower simply lied about why they became an NGO and why they terminated their status. They didn't terminate their status because they learned about the the criteria for being an NGO, the United Nations said their criteria had never changed before 1991. That anyone who became an NGO with the Department of Public Information had to adhere to the ideals and support the goals of the United Nations. So once again, the point being made is this is one of those big things that woke me up. And thank you for being here. I hope you do the research on your own. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, look it up. Do some research on United Nations and Jehovah's Witnesses. Just Google it and see what you find. Until next time, y'all take care. And again, stay free from them codes.